how do you want to do this? I say, it's real simple.
This is American justice. This is American democracy. And those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail. But if you can't prove that a democracy is not hypocrisy, then don't put your hands on me. Democracy is hypocrisy. If democracy means freedom, why aren't our people free? If democracy means justice, why don't we have justice? If democracy means equality, why don't we have equality?
Look, we came in together, we leave together. We came in together, we leave together.
Happens next.
If you can't do for yourself what the white man is doing for himself, don't say you're equal with the white man. If you can't set up a factory like he sets up a factory, don't talk that old equality talk.
Amen. Happens next.
How do you want to do this? I say, it's real simple.
We're going to raise enough hell until things get better. And we're going to show them by God they can't spend our money if they won't treat us with respect. That's our job, and I invite you to join us in getting that job done.
Okay, family, we in the house. We're gonna just have a little discussion about the NFL and if black folks is gonna boycott and just chop it up. Like, I got my man Yaya here, so y'all already know we're gonna come with good solid info. We're gonna try to come with some, nice perspective outside of the box that y'all may not really catch on ESPN, but just some opinions and some facts about what's going on. What's up, Yaya?
Hey, Salam. What's going on with you, Will?
Now we here. Just figured, we have a little dialogue, a little discussion,
Yeah, I think it's needed. Because, I think a lot of times we still get caught up in all this emotional riffraff that's going left and right, discussing on these so-called sensitive subjects and topics that we see every day on the news every day. So I think we need to really just look at it in a different manner so we can look at it and approach it in different ways. So that hopefully we get past this emotional stage that we on and get down to actually doing something about this shit.
Right, because you already know if you get too emotional, either way, up or down, it clouds your judgment, and you can't really process information properly and everything.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me ask you this, bro. Do you think the NFL, or let me rephrase that. Do you think you think black folks gonna end up boycotting the NFL this season?
Honestly, it's not enough people who even, I would think, put that much emphasis on it to actually formulate an opinion about it in the first place. To even put that much energy into not watching football or gambling on it or anything like that. Because I don't think that anybody really at this stage really even gives as much of a care that it's even about any type of racist shit at this point. Because it's all different other racist events that go on in the country on a daily basis. It's trivial compared to the idea that you can get snatched out your vehicle by the police.
Right.
So I don't think I think the people who are kind of sensitive about the subject, I think it's like, if it wasn't for the whole idea that Colin Kaepernick did the whole protest anyway, nobody would have stood up for the fact that how they portray and how they treat the black players in the NFL. And it's been going on like that. They've been having reoccurring cases of racism in the NFL periodically for the last 20 years, but it's only because of this so-called Colin Kaepernick stance that it actually, people actually supposedly having this, trivial sense of being upset and uproar about the situation when it's obviously the NFL is a racist institution.
Well, let me say this, if you and considering the influence of television media, the divisive programming, how much people is tuned in, to different social media platforms. Like considering that fact, um, the awareness of the little Kaepernick stance and if he doesn't get a job or who didn't pick him up, that's a lot of the public talk. It seemed like it's a lot of people from the perspective where I'm at, from what I'm seeing, it's seeming like a lot of people is aware of it. I understand true indeed that, it's a lot of stuff going on, but the media, they do, such a bang up job of publicizing and programming into people's thoughts what they want. I mean, we see
Right.
Kaepernick every day and people's
I
opinions.
mean, honestly, it's a more of a propaganda at this point because of all the other racial tension that's going on in the country. It's sort of like it's kind of like keeping everything going at different levels of racism that's so called tolerable or intolerable to people. You know what I'm saying? Like some people use this sports as a way to escape the daily woes of being a black in America, where they could just see whatever team that they root for, or maybe they have personal connections to players, and they make it to the NFL, and they know their background stories and all different types of stuff. But people have these different emotional connections to sports in general, and especially since the way the system is set up. A lot of young children, they're not going to school to become doctors and scientists. They usually go on playing basketball, playing football, something like that. And that's just the reality of coming out, the urban settings that, that they put influence on the things that the only way that you're actually going to get out is either you're going to have a 4.5 GPA scholarship, you know what I'm saying, or you're going to have to play sports. And that's just bottom line.
Right.
So, I mean, different levels of understanding the whole influence of how the whole just professional sports, because you can't really pigeonhole it to just the NFL. The NBA does the same thing. Major League Baseball does the same thing. It's like, if it wasn't for Puerto Ricans and Cubans, I mean, the Major League Baseball wouldn't be too much exciting. So I mean, it's always been that type of symbiotic relationship between I want to say the people who procure the money off of having these different players, these melanated players, in these different various forms of sports.
Now, in saying that, one thing uh, that's apparently being kind of mentioned, one of the differences with these major U.S. sporting teams, I mean organizations, is that the NFL doesn't have guaranteed contracts. So,
Right.
and I think with Kaepernick, of course, a lot of the media is focusing on Kaepernick more than the stance of what he is talking about, because it's really about what you're saying as far as um what we were talking about earlier, as far as police going unprosecuted, terrorizing,
Right.
you know. So and that's basically what Kaepernick was, his whole stance was about. But with the media, they do such an excellent job of changing the narrative.
Well, I mean, when you diagnose the whole situation and understand the whole idea that black masculinity is under fire, and these different criteria that it used to be considered a black man are no longer, what I'm saying, is no longer enforced by the older generation or even by the contemporaries who are out here in the streets doing certain things. So the whole idea would have been to be a responsible individual, standing upright, and doing things that actually procure life rather so than destroying it. Those values are no longer what the norm is. So it's different ideals that I guess that the younger generations was they're raised upon. Like the whole idea with the Facebooks and Snapchats and all these different things like that, to where they really and narcissistic and really vain, and they're more influenced on the selfish ways about life and how they view themselves versus actually having empathizing and sympathizing with the average person walking down the street and things like that. It has nothing to do with particular race, but even more so in ourselves, we don't look at ourselves as people who go through all these different things that we face as a people. So I mean, when you analyze things like that, it's kind of easier to understand how they're able to do these things to us, and not for us to even be even that much aware, because it's not personalized, it's not individualized. It's always a problem when it's somebody that you personally know, but when we look at ourselves as a people, we don't look at ourselves with that same effect. So
True.
that's the segue in right there.
no doubt about that. You know, and the focus, and then I want to kind of keep us on this NFL thing too. But it's so many layers to it, and so many tentacles to it, going off in so many directions. I mean, we can
Right.
you know, but one thing I wanted to bring up, when you was talking about different races incidents, that's been occurring in the NFL over the last 20, even 30, 40 years. I happen to remember an incident when I was younger with Bo Jackson, and everybody kind of know Bo Jackson,
Right.
and Bo Jackson, when he came out of college, like maybe I think it was like one of his last, I guess, maybe junior year of baseball, and he was doing real good. He was really kind of contemplating about playing baseball. But long story short, what ended up kind of happening is he went on a visit to Tampa Bay. He didn't want to get drafted by Tampa Bay, but he went on a visit. But going on that visit, he took a jet from the owner of, I can't remember his name, but the owner of Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization sent him a jet down there, brought him up. He looked at it, left, came back to the game. So when he was suiting up, his coach ended up coming out telling him like, "Man, you took a trip up there to Tampa Bay." And he told him, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you shouldn't have did that. Now you ineligible for the last this game of baseball and the rest of your eligibility for baseball." So and then later on, Bo Jackson ended up kind of saying like he felt like the owner tried to sabotage his chances of playing baseball because he felt his thought was, man, they really just wanted to make me ineligible for baseball, so then I would just have to go towards football, and that would lean towards them having the number one pick. So a lot of people, if you said that was racism to somebody, they'd be like, "What? Nah, that's not racism. That's just, business and trying to." But to understand how it works when you're trying to control a person, and then
Right.
when you're trying to profit off of
It's,
a person, this is something that you kind of see, like you said, over
well,
the history.
it resonates on a lot of different levels. It's not even just the whole idea that they buy and sell and trade people basically on a personalized private market that they call the NFL. Because that's basically all it is. Because their whole stock is people. You know what I'm saying? They have these different drafts of people. You know what I'm saying? Which is nothing, just anything different than the slave trades. And when they have, the combines, when they put the bucks on the market, it's the same exact thing. This is why the NFL is over 70%, black and Hispanic.
No,
You know, so it's pretty much. I mean, if you took all the names in professional sports throughout all history, over 70% of the greats, or or African, descended people. You only have your handful of white players in each respective sport that can actually be on the same level as an African, who was in the Hall of Fame, even for instance. And so, like, they've always used us as the standard to what the quality is because we were the communicable trade.
no doubt,
And it's no difference now.
no doubt, no doubt. And so now the money that these teams are earning or making, they in the multi-billion dollar organizations. So sometimes it's hard for people to understand when a comparison to slavery is mentioned with the NFL because they like, man, well, these guys is, in the top 1%. Like, what you mean? They ain't slaves. I mean, they choose to play in the NFL. Like, what would be your response to that type of, comment or statement
Oh,
about
I,
what
I
they
would
do?
I would tell people first of all that you need to understand who owns the NFL and what these people are and what they have other influences and what our normal daily life to, but we're not aware of what they do. Like, people are aware that Art Shell, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, is also the owner of Home Depot. But it doesn't really stop there. If you actually do the information, you go back and trace root back to the origin of the NFL, A lot of these old white owners have really old money. Like Lucas Oil is really old money. You know, the owner of the Browns once upon a time owned the Cincinnati Bengals and the Browns, and because of the antitrust laws that they put into the NFL, he had to sell one of them, but he still kept it inside of his family. So it's like a lot of these money, and you know, we all know that Jerry Jones, you know, he's a big oil tycoon and stuff like that. His ties with the Bush family and all this different type of stuff. So it's like all this money is traceable back to these old white people who had all this money back then when they were really constituting the stock market back then, and when they were actually selling people on the live market. You know what I'm saying? And he breaks down even to the law that they use when we know we were basically looked at agricultural chattel, you know, in terms of what we are, you know, saying our Social Security numbers and things like that as an employee. So all this it affects us particularly as being so-called Negroes and African Americans and colors and all that different type of stuff. But it really comes down to the fact that we are agriculture and we are sold on the market. And it's particularly so in the NFL, to where it's a microcosm of the macrocosm of the whole capitalist society system in the United States, and what it's going to evolve into eventually, to where it's going to be actually to where they're actually showing it now, to where they're microchipping people now. And people thought it was conspiracy theory back in the 90s and in the early 2000s, when people were saying stuff about microchips. But now that it's coming to fruition, it's like, you know, the shit is getting real now. So
and notice when you had stated, like, you know, it's a microcosm of what's going on. Like, we know that one of the techniques that's used against uh, indigenous people, black people around the world is divide and conquer. And the reason I'm saying that is because that division, you can see that in the NFL, where you got different divisions and conferences.
right.
And then I was on ask you earlier, is the NFL? Would you say that the NFL, or I would ask, do you think the NFL instills a sense of tribalism, or does it play off
Oh,
of,
it's Inception.
or
His Inception is they're definitely motivated, particularly by the family connections and tribals, because you have to think about all the different players who have incarnations of themselves in the NFL or the NBA over the years. You know, it's coming from a good stock of healthy athletes. You know, when you look at, you know, Kobe's dad, he may not have been the best player, but the fact that they are still forming these people. You know, you look at all the Crow Martys that are in the NFL. You know, you look at you look at all the you look at even Stephen Curry. You know, or even Klay Thompson. Like, they have people who have been in the NFL, and they are cultivated, and they are formed from a young age to continue on this legacy of having servitude inside the system for money. So that's basically what it is. It's like, you know, there are people who, you know, even if you go back to the Got game and how that discovered your whole study of Jesus Shuttlesworth was, or how they drafted him and how they did all these different things that they do every day to these young black athletes coming out of these poor states, Alabama, Mississippi, or even how they even did Reggie Bush. They watched Reggie Bush ever since he was 6 years old, and he took the fall for the whole USC scandal. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's not by coincidence that they're able to do all these different things, and the same story keeps coming out. Even if you look at Tyler, Texas, and Odessa, Texas, how many good black running backs are coming out of that area in Texas?
oh yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
South Florida, no doubt.
Yeah. So it's like there's a systematic approach, the way that they keep on having these excellent players that keep on going up every 7 years or so. You'll find an exceptional player that exceeds what the standard is of what a great or Hall of Fame player is. You know what I'm saying? I.e. LeBron James. You know, as much as people, you know what I'm saying, including myself, might even have a bias against how the system was set up for LeBron to be as great as he is, there's still no doubt in fact that he did actually put up these numbers, you know, physically, to attribute the things that he does. So there's always be a different reiteration of somebody who's before. Before then, you know what I'm saying, Kobe was his contemporary, but still Kobe had already established what was going to get him in the Hall of Fame. It was more of a passing of the torch. And, you know, basically everybody has to agree that even though he may not have all the stats, but Kobe is almost a mirror to Michael Jordan. And you go back further than that, you go back to Madden, you go back to arguably who really is one of the best players in the league, who statistically will always be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But, you know, there's different levels of different propaganda that they send out to different people for different times. At that time that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had changed his name from Lou Alcindor, that was pretty much a provocative move in terms of being aware of what's going on with the black struggle was back then.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a certain system that went on where even though we don't have the solidarity amongst black athletes back then, there was still a different propaganda that needed to be shifted in order to get things from where the point it was then to the point it is now, for black people to be under such a subjugated fog of all the different images that we see and not be more engaged in what we want to think that we engaged in terms of having a solution to get ourselves out of this shit.
Now, see, you mentioned a point about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you know, the image just popped in my head how it was him and a bunch of other athletes sitting around the table, and Jim Brown. I think they were showing support for Ali, I believe, not going into Vietnam. And so
Right.
now, will we see that type of thing in the NFL as far as support for the stance and the
Absolutely not.
Okay, you already
Absolutely not.
Okay, now.
And I'll give a couple of reasons why, and I'm gonna keep it literal in the sense of that what people don't understand is that, like I said, and just touched on briefly a couple of minutes ago, was the fact that they formed these players.
Wait, hold on, family. We're gonna take a quick break, because I hear the music coming up, and then we're gonna get into some of this of why we won't see that type of solidarity in the NFL, and see if, you know, just a nice little discussion to see how deep we can get into this. So just give us a second. We'll come right back. You know, get your libations, your coffee, your tea, roll up one, whatever you want to do, and we'll be right back. Okay, y'all, we back with it. So now let's go ahead and jump in where we left off, you know, like double Dutch. But okay, family.
Mm-hmm.
So now, you know, we was kind of like, you know, will we see that type of solidarity in today's league? And so you kind of stepped in before I even got the thought all the way out that you saying no. So
no, absolutely not.
Now, what would be your reasoning, family, you know what I'm saying, on why you would say that we won't see that type of solidarity right now?
Oh, I think it's just the whole idea, just the construct of why these athletes are there or where they are in the limelight. You know, there's a lot of players in these leagues who just fill up the roster. We don't get any type of commercialism. We don't get any type of headlines about anything that they do. So when you see these elite status players who are put in these positions to have influence over what the most common man could have water cooler talk about with a particular team, that shows you the type of influence that these people are actually put at the point that they are to even have you think about them amongst your normal daily life. So when you're looking at it at that level, and people who actually go into these leagues knowing that it's one of these type of things where you either pick from a small age or you actually get into this idea to where you sign with these underagents and they help you prepare yourself to an elite status of being a player because you sign under an oath, under basically a Masonic code that you're going to be this type of player and you're going to take this type of sacrifice. You're going to take this type of loss in order to have this so-called story that propels you to star status. You know, and even more recently, what we could talk about is Isaiah Thomas's sister dying. There was a whole lot of Masonic code involved with that. You know, the whole idea of why his sister died and he went to the finals and he lost and all this different type stuff. And you know, it's a twisted game. And people don't understand that when I'm not even going to say even the whole idea of what Illuminati is, because that's not important. What it is that this is a business. And it's like they farm and cultivate all these different people. You even think about music, how many families of people, when people related in the music business are and related to people who are either producers in Hollywood or actual other singers who are like in Motown era. These are people who understand that you want to keep a perpetual idea of what servitude is to their ideas and what their ideas are. So when you have the idea that there's going to be solidarity among these black players, the same idea of what the boule is in terms of these outstanding Negroes and colors who are or pillars of our society, so to speak, who have the money and the influence to do things but don't seem to not. It's still the same influence that's going on now, and that transfers itself down to the Stephen A. Smiths and the Ray Lewises and the Michael Vicks. And, you know what I'm saying? These people who have shucking jobs and jumped through hoops and done things, and people wonder why Colin Kaepernick is put on this the vilified level to where he's, you know, saying he hasn't done anything criminal and things like that. But what he was, though, he wasn't a lapdog. That wasn't his script. His script was to be the antithesis of what Cam Newton was, all this shucking and jiving and doing, showing his teeth and grinning and grinning, and that he was doing. And then he took the most, you know, symbolically, he took the most heartfelt downfall for black masculinity after that. He was, you know, saying the whole Black Panther, you know, saying the Maliks about how, you know, saying subliminally, and then him being actually related to Huey Newton and all these different type things. Like these are all different points that they hit on subliminally for black people to have our emotions to warped around, so that we can have a inverted and a bastardized way of how we think and look about ourselves, and it perpetuates itself. You still have the Black Panther theme, because now you have the Black Panther movie that's coming out. You know, and black people are all used to energized about that because it's still this Black Panther subliminal tie that they're tying in. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got you. Now, see, when you mentioned about the gesture, what he doing this, the symbolic way he went about doing that, I think, family, I think it's really important to note how how powerful a symbol is, and sometimes they get overlooked because a symbol is just another way to express an idea, and our language is consisted of a bunch of symbols. And so
Exactly.
sometimes, not knowing, just not knowing some of the origins of these symbols. A lot of
Right.
times, we unaware amongst people who are aware. And one example of that, I just happen to think of, is that symbol for the New Orleans Saints. um, I can post the information for people, just to so
Right.
they know I'm thorough with it. But that symbol, at one point in time in history, during the 1600s or so, that was used as a brand that was or iron that was used to brand slaves
Right.
as property. You know what I'm saying? Like who this particular person in Louisiana, that was one of the symbols that they used to make an iron branding. So, and a lot of times, these symbols, they mean more than what people really, understand. And so I'm just saying that to say, just to kind of validate the point of symbolism and how powerful a
Right.
gesture is, because we've seen the same kind of reaction with my say his name again, sir. Not I, I don't no disrespect, Chris Jackson, but how you pronounce his name?
Uh, 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 Sharif Mahmoud Abdul
Right,
Mahmoud.
right. So
Yeah.
and we kind of seen him make the same type of gesture and receive the same type of response. Um,
Right.
in
Excuse me. The brother name is Mahmoud Abdul Rahuf. Excuse me. The brother,
bang.
yeah, that's the brother's name. Right.
Right. So and then so just carrying on that point as far as how powerful symbolism and gestures can be to the psyche, and then I think one reason this whole little Kaepernick thing is being kind of exploited, I guess you could say, or is heavily publicized, is because, like I said earlier, they want to change the narrative because the gesture in itself, the symbolism in itself, is saying a lot more than most of these commentators and critics are able to put together.
American media is it gets its bread and butter on being a complete brainwashing agent. It's just in its inception itself.
No
You
doubt.
know, the whole idea that when you watch television, your brain space goes on beta waves, and you're more likely to have subliminal information because there are different images that are going on in the background that you don't necessarily catch, or certain themes that the way the brain just picks up information that we're not aware of how our brain works, and they use those type of things as devices against us. Also, by dumbing down, the information that they put inside these programs over time, and the whole idea of what these programs even represent correlates exactly with what's going on in the real world. So a lot of the times what it is you just kind of like blurring this line between reality and fiction. You understand what I'm saying?
No
So a
doubt.
lot of just the whole idea, even with reality television, this love and hip hop trend and all these different type things, they have these different inceptions of fractalized black mentality. They'll have like a family setting or an empire setting or power couples, whatever setting, but they'll be so dysfunctional in how they relate with each other that it's not a positive image of how to relate with each other as black men and women. Or then you have all of a sudden the idea of what's going on in the country with the homosexuality and transgender and all these different type things. These are injected into the programming that we watch as a people that we can so-called relate to just on the simple bias that it's just black people in these programs.
No doubt.
You know what I'm saying? So we don't even care what the quality is at this point of what the television that we're watching. We're just watching it because it's, familiarized B-list, C-list celebrities that we've come up to watch over the last 15 years. So we'll watch it just to watch it. So we don't care that we're watching a man dress up as a female and represent a strong black woman that's acting like a black man, but it's a black man that's really dressed up as a black woman. There's all these different mental scopes of fucking each other in terms of what the whole idea of what we represent as being black man and as black women, and not being in combination to be with each other to be in competition, but to understand that there's things that black women can do that black men can't do, and vice versa. For one, black woman gives life. We can't do that, So
Now, see, family. Now, this kind of goes into the logic of why I would also say it would be difficult to see that type of solidarity in the NFL, because we are talking about not just 6 months, but we're talking decades of programming these type of ideas into the general public's mind, formulating opinions for them. So in doing
right,
that, you will find, of course, it's a team, and they say it's not no I in team, but depending on the situation that you in and the way that they construct it, some of these cats can't even think about sacrificing the potential to establish something for their mother who put in 20 years at a job, their sister that they may be taking care of because they don't have,
right.
you know what I mean? Like, so depending on the situation, so so I think it may be, and I wouldn't fault individuals.
I mean, it's you can't really fault them, because it's the way that this system is designed. It's a lot of different programs and applications that's running inside the other programs and applications that make the system what it is.
No doubt.
So you have the idea of us as being just the idea of what we think about collectively, of what we think that God is and what God is not. We're not on agreement with that. So that gives us a disconnect from our land and our nativity just right there, because we can't agree upon what the idea of what God is to even reclaim our land as a people. So as long as we warped idea of what that is, we won't agree to actually bond with each other because we think at each other as potential devil worshippers per se, because we don't agree that one particular entity over another entity is the true God. And you'll never have a people who don't believe into the same God to have unified. That's just bottom line.
Right. And then we realize that the makeup of the NFL as well as society in general is a bunch of different people with a bunch of different ideologies and a bunch of different theories and beliefs. So unity, solidarity sometimes will be kind of difficult to find. So family, looking at some of the history of the NFL, and then I heard what was the comment? What was the comment that Kaepernick kind of said that I think Vic was suffering from some type of
Oh,
syndrome.
the Stockholm syndrome.
Right, right, okay.
Basically just having this sympathetic relationship to being oppressed and having some type of, you know, feel a relative relationship to the basically abuse, feeling like you more likely or you deserve to be abused, and you're understanding why your abuser is abusing you,
Right.
and you want to help your abuser abuse you better.
Now,
That's the type of syndrome that we in.
now somebody will say, okay, he done said that this guy is suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Like now, where is the abuse at? Like now, you would find somebody that's gonna ask that question or say, well, what do you mean? Like, how's the NFL abusing? You know what I mean? Like that. I mean, because I know it's coming.
Well,
So now,
well,
how would you
you
respond
look
to
at
that?
you can just look at the fact of how the average black player is treated in the NFL versus the average white player treated in the NFL. You don't even have to look at the so-called Kaepernick situation with all these mediocre quarterbacks getting deals before Kaepernick did. That's not even the point. The point is exactly what Shannon Sharp was referring to, is that you cannot take a stand as anybody who's trying to be a strong black man with a positive image and not take backlash for it,
You know what?
because that's not the propaganda.
Right. Now let me interject this real fast while you on this same note, because I think I didn't hear this. I don't listen to too much ESPN, but I try to, check it out here and there. But I don't know if I happen to hear, but after the 2011 NFL lockout, Adrian Peterson, he had said it was modern day slavery, and then he caught some support from Rashard Mendenhall, and Mendenhall said anyone with knowledge of the slave trade and the NFL could say that these two parallel each other. And I just want to quote that exactly so I don't sound like I'm putting any words in his mouth. So I mean, it's not like you said. It's like you said. It's not new. This situation of racism underlining what's going on in the NFL. But but once again, once the media grabs hold, and then they'll change the narrative, and then now we talking about
It's rinse and repeat.
yeah.
It's basically rinse and repeat. It goes through these different cycles of where, even if you want to go back to the whole idea of what OJ, you know, OJ was squeaky clean, perfect smile, you know, American pie ass, saying Negro.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he killed his wife and his dude on his property, and all of a sudden he was just this horrible demon who came from the ninth level of hell and shit.
No doubt.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And people are still split on the idea whether or not OJ did it or not, but there's enough evidence that supports that they set his ass up. It's point blank.
Mm-hmm.
So
no doubt.
When you examine the propaganda of what came out after that, the different things that even Ray Caruth, when Ray Caruth, killed his wife supposedly, and he, hid in the trunk and all this other type shit. And then the fact that Ray Lewis would even have this so-called cool mentality makes perfect sense, because he owes his whole life to these people getting him out of this situation to where he should have went down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's going to be loyal to the plantation. He's going to go back to Candyland every time.
Now, see, and
You understand what I'm saying?
when you mention OJ, one thing it made me think of is where it should be somewhat glaring to people, like easily seen, that the treatment that OJ received after the not guilty, how he was constantly
Right.
under surveillance. You know, the police. He was somebody that they said, okay, we're gonna get you on something else. But if you notice the treatment that he
Right.
went through after that supposedly killing a white woman compared to the treatment that Zimmerman went through after he was found not guilty for killing a young black man. It's almost night and day.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the police
Right.
ain't running around trying to make sure they get Zimmerman locked up. The public opinion that this guy, that faded on out. And I understand that, one was an NFL player, highest. I understand the status, but I'm just saying the treatment of the two after
Right.
they were supposedly killed somebody, but it took a human life, and both was acquitted. Like, you killed a white woman, it's over for you. You killed a young black male,
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah. And
you
see,
get the
even
GoFundMe
even
page and
even the
everything for the
so-called
woman.
even the so-called white chick that got killed in whatever Minnesota, I believe it was, or whatever, by the Somalian Muslim cop. You know,
Right.
and then it was the idea that they made it be known he was Somalian Muslim cop. You know what I'm saying? Killing this precious vanilla white woman. You know what I'm saying? And it was just such a tragic, and it went on TV with the crisis actors and the fake tears and all this shit. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, it's kind of like to the point to where they have no regard on anybody's intelligence as a black person to believe anything or have any type of correlation to truth whatsoever. Because anybody who thinks with any type of rational mind, you feel insulted by the shit that you see on TV and the shit that's on Facebook on a day-to-day basis, because it's disrespecting what it is to be an intelligent person and be able to think and rationalize different information and what comes into you. And it's the shit is sickening,
But
because we live in a situation in a time to where we know exactly what our outlets are going to be in life in terms of where it is to be a black person living in America.
now,
You know, you need to be able to dance on the good, sing, you know what I'm saying, shoot the basketball, run hella fast, you know what I'm saying, or you be funny as fuck.
now,
You know what I'm saying? Those are your options.
Now, see, I just happen to think, like, when you said sickness, how it's like an insult to your intelligence. Like, and I'm just I'm gonna keep this kind of on this Kaepernick and this whole NFL thing, but where it's almost it's sickening in this situation, or in this case, where it's to the point where the whole reason that Kaepernick is took this stance, went through this whole thing, is because black people were being terrorized by the police, and the police was going unpunished, which really, in my opinion, is another way to say it's a war going on. So now in saying
Oh, yeah.
that, the sickening part is that, like I mentioned, the narrative now is about what team won't pick him up, what money he sacrificed. You'll catch on social media people saying what tactics he should have took. But you rarely see people addressing the issue that started everything. And it's like I said this earlier just on a little post. Like, it seems as if people think fighting racism is
Right.
ignoring racism.
Being silent to it. Right.
Yeah, like it's
Okay.
ridiculous. And then when
Right.
it start popping up everywhere, then people start looking surprised and shocked. But like, man, damn, you didn't even
I mean,
say nothing about it.
most people ain't tripping off racism. They either, most people, as long as they don't feel the direct effects of racism, they cool.
And
Or
that's
even if that, they would have just had a better position in the racist system. They want to be able to do the things that the European could do and feel like the European, so that they can feel comfortable with the way they're going in life, because they're feeling and they're emulating more of the European experience where they're supposed to be perpetrated on what we see on TV.
right.
So the common black person has the wrong idea about what we should be thinking about what life is all about anyway, because we have the mentality of our captors. We engage in the same type of activities and do the same things that our captors do, and yet we have a problem relating with ourselves because we don't relate with ourselves organically at all.
No doubt, no doubt. You know. Now look, family, look, we gonna go ahead and wrap this one up because I'm telling you, we hit you with a lot. I feel like it's just a good little conversation, good dialogue. Maybe it'll open up some discussions that you may have with people at work at lunch. But it was just a topic I want to touch on. But I think we kind of pull back the layer a little bit on some of these things. Like you said, the chances of actual boycott happening to where it may make some impact. It's about how concerned um the people are about that. So in my opinion, I kind of think it's becoming more of an issue. I just happened to notice an article of a petition that had been going around that said like it was, I think,
Mm-hmm.
10,000 or maybe 100,000 signatures saying that they would, if it's no Kaepernick, then it's no NFL type petition. That was
Oh, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to put your money where your mouth is,
right. No
and
doubt.
that's what it boils down to.
And
You can have a million people write a million names on it about anything, and it sounds like it's a noble cause. But let's be to the point about it. If it's not talking about money and actually moving money from one place to another place, then you're not doing anything.
and see that's
And
that's where
that's the problem.
that's where the trick is. Sometimes I think people don't. Okay, they hear boycott and they say boycott the NFL. How? And so I think what would have to be done where you can maybe try to affect taking some money out of their pockets would be some of that. Oh, okay, no NFL packages. Um, Purchasing no NFL jerseys or merchandise. Um, it's a couple other things that I think could probably, go into
Well,
saying, okay, well, those who support it, let's, now if it make a dent in what they doing, that's left to say. But I
well, people don't understand about these contracts that the NFL has with all these different shareholders. And when you're looking at it from a business aspect, you have the players who are the stock of the NFL. Without the players, there is no NFL, period. So when you're talking about whether or not you want to be able to make an influence or whether or not the NFL makes any money, if you're not attacking their contracts that they have with all these different vendors and all these different people who have these commercial times and Budweiser and Pizza Hut and all these different type people, then you're not stopping their investors, their stockholders.
no doubt.
So what you need to do is get the idea of having solidarity as the players. Because if the players don't boycott anything, then it's futile.
Right,
Everything will just be smoke and mirrors.
right,
And this is what people do not want to understand about looking at it from a business aspect. As much as they want to talk about Pan-Africanism and what we need to do to buy up the block and all those different types of stuff, if you're not understanding what has happened to us and what is being used against us and being able to look at it and point it out for what it is, you're not going to be able to transfer that into what we need to do for ourselves to get ourselves out of a so-called financial crisis as a people to where we don't even control any of the resources anyway. So there's different levels to the attack of why black people are trapped inside the situation that we trapped inside, because we don't realize that we are still in slavery. Period. We don't want to really sit down and look ourselves in the mirror and look at yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, you are a slave. We don't want to say that. We want to say that we're free because we go around, having sex and smoking weed and doing whatever the hell that we do as individuals. And I'm saying those are bad things. I'm not saying it like that, but we have all this freedom that we think that we can do whatever the fuck we want, but we still have a tax identification number. We still have an employee ID number for this United States corporation. And we don't realize that we're in slavery, and that the reason the same things that have been going on back in the 1800s, back in the early 19th century, back in the early 20th century, these things have still been happening. There's been a trickle-down effect to why we are exactly in the state of to where Jay-Z has to make a character video cartoon so that black people will get a message that's been said a million different times in a million different ways for the last 40, 50 years.
no doubt,
You understand what I'm saying?
no doubt.
So It's a definitely it's a system to why we are in the system that we in and what's getting injected into us. And it's like the whole feminization of the masculine image of in sports is exactly going on what's going on with the emasculation of men in hip hop. Exact same thing. That's why you have all these different dudes coming out with transsexuals and shit like that.
Right.
And you have all these different things to where they're doing all these different type things as pedophiles and shit. You know, things that we supposedly as African people didn't engage in. You know, there was a moral conduct and code for the shit that was going on within the black community. Now we don't have any of that anymore. Motherfuckers are shooting babies. Motherfuckers walking around with purses as men. Motherfuckers walking around with mustaches as women. It's like shit is going crazy.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay, family. So we got probably a couple more shows we can probably knock out for y'all. You already know we got topics
Yeah.
that come up off of this. So
Oh,
you know. But yeah, we
yeah.
gonna set that right there. Let y'all marinate on that for a little bit. Appreciate y'all listening. You know, and we just gonna keep trying to come with some different perspectives, some information, some facts. You know, and just keeping it 1,000.
All the time, man. You know, it's about time that we had, you know, the real dialogue with people who realize what's going on. You know, because there's not enough of that. You know, even a lot of people who have these different medias that's been doing their thing for a while, they kind of gone lost their way. So I think, you know, we need to have more people who are willing to say, hey, no, fuck that. It's not that. It's what it is.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, family. Well, y'all hear the music, and we'll be back at you with another installment sooner than later. Trust that. All right, peace.
All right, Salam.